When you step off into the realm of machine learning, that is where essentially you're not generating fixed rules. So that really is, in my mind, what differentiates a set of algorithms which are rules-based from machine learning.
Welcome to The Turndown. My name is Sebastian Leitner, and in this week's episode, I'm interviewing Jason Pinto. He's the co-founder and COO of Pace Revenue. Jason has a great profile. He is a technologist at heart. The conversation really is around where's revenue management going with the sort of merge and emergence of artificial intelligence, machine learning, and conversational, artificial intelligence, if you will. I challenge him because I want to know, is it going to replace revenue managers on site? He stays clear of saying yes, but I can't wait for you to discover his perspective. So let's roll the tape. Welcome to The Turndown. I'm really pleased to be joined by Jason Pinto, COO and co-founder at Pace. Welcome, Jason.
Thank you, Sebastian. Great to be here, and thank you for having me.
Absolutely. I want to get right into it. I'm curious what's keeping you up at night these days, Jason.
Well, I guess I'm not alone in worrying about the broader macroeconomy. It's a kind of a tricky time and that there's some indicators that look very positive, job growth, salaries, and so on, but some that look pretty negative. Of course, inflation, and in particular, the UK and the Eurozone inflation in particular. And of course, fears about, production in China and so on. So lots of things we can't control that are keeping me up at night.
Help me demystify some of the assumptions that we have. You're based in London, in the UK, and we hear stories like there's no tomatoes or there's no vegetables and there's no fruits. Is that true? Should we send a care pack?
Thank you for your concern. I know you friendly Canadians are always very concerned about people in London, but no, it's obviously some of the daily newspapers getting a bit ahead of themselves. Yes, there were shortages here and there, but nothing like the kind of epidemic, this sort of grinding to a halt image that people had of the UK. What is clear is that the UK does have much higher inflation than, say, anywhere in North America at this point. And that's not great. So we've had a difficult time keeping inflation in check. And that's partly because our central bank has been slower to respond than the US Federal Reserve. But we're still here. We're still here, and the team across Europe is sending us care packages to make sure that we don't miss out tomatoes.
All right, excellent. Well, you mentioned the economy. So on one hand, there's inflation, there's the cost of living that is increasing. On the other hand, hoteliers and travel as a whole seems to be going okay. It seems to be going well. What's your point of view there?
Yeah, I think obviously this is all about perspective. So, of course, our industry came off a 100-year pandemic. So, probably the worst time that anyone in the industry alive has ever seen. So off of that base, we've done incredibly well in 2021, 2022, and now 2023. So I think there was obviously a lot of pent-up demand and obviously a lot of the sort of pandemic money that went into people's pockets went into travel because consumers were doing revenge travel and so on. And I think as well, a long-term trend of remote working and the digital nomad has obviously helped travel and transport more broadly. So I think all indicators were looking positive versus that very low base and in general versus sort of long-term historic norms. That, and I saw, one kind of slightly worrying graph, which is that, there was a surplus of cash in the US just after pandemic times, and that's being unwound as we speak. So, there's probably a few months left of surplus cash in the consumer's pocket, and we'll see how travel and transport fares once that surplus cash has been spent, and we are kind of quote back to normal in that regard as well. But certainly in the sort of short term where all systems go and everything appears to be continuing pointing upwards and to the right.
Based on the data you're seeing, are you expecting the summer to be high demand, high ADR, continuation of what we've seen in 2022?
Yeah, I'd say that's the case. I'd say that, obviously summer is such an important time for hoteliers everywhere, and we don't see any worries about summer. So we're quite excited, and our customers are quite excited about a great summer ahead of them.
And then moving out of summer, is there, I don't know, stormy clouds ahead, or are things sort of tempering off from your perspective?
Well, my crystal ball, unfortunately, is not as clear as most others. And more importantly, I'm not in the business of forecasting. That's a
Okay.
instant opportunity to look foolish, right? Economic forecasting. So, I think mixed signals is the best I can say from what I've read and from what our customers are saying.
Hmm.
So we'll see. That far ahead
Excellent.
is starts getting trickier.
Excellent. I'll look at this recording in 6 months and see how we did against it.
As I said, forecasting is an easy opportunity to feel foolish in a few months. But there you go.
Jason, I'm curious how you got started with Pace. You've been the co-founder, I believe, since 2017, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, we got started then.
Yeah, help us understand how you got started, what the idea was behind it. Tell us how Pace became Pace.
Sure. So those that know me and my co-founders and the great team that we've been lucky enough to have join us on this adventure will note that, we're mostly technologists, data scientists, engineers, etc. And we've brought on over time some really excellent people from the hospitality industry. But we didn't start there. We started mostly with entrepreneurs and techies like myself. And we started there because we had, this kind of much bigger desire to solve price. Every company needs to have a kind of a BHAG, a big hairy ego. And so that was ours, right? It was clear to us that price was being set quite badly using Excel spreadsheets, heuristics, etc., or very old software in lots of industries. And so we actually started much broader than just the hospitality industry. We started with desire to solve price using the tools of modern data science, decision intelligence, machine learning. But very quickly, we decided to focus on hospitality because of all the amazing dynamics that you find in the hospitality industry. First off, it's a gigantic industry. I'm preaching to the choir here, obviously, but I think most people outside the industry don't realize how huge the industry is, yeah? Touching $1 trillion on a good year in spend. And, that's an entrepreneur's dream come true, a big market with what was clearly still an unmet need and, competition that hadn't completely dominated the space. So those are the things that really took us in to focus in on the hospitality market from, soon after founding. And it's been a great journey since, and that we've been, continuing to build the team and grow both on the technology side, but also with some really amazing people from the hospitality industry with that right balance so that we can sort of challenge the orthodoxies of the industry, but obviously know enough to speak our customers' language, understand their pain points very clearly. So we think that that balance is really an important one to strike, and we continue to work hard at that.
As you went from sort of pricing potentially more goods to focusing on hospitality, what were some of the unique traits this industry had that you sort of observed that you were surprised of, maybe?
I think complexity is one. So I think from outside the industry, people go, oh, you're just setting prices.
Mhm.
Wow. Well, that really belies a lack of understanding about how complex things are when you get into the complexities of rate codes and the incredible numbers of integrations you need to build and the sort of lack of data and the scarcity of good data as well. You really are into a problem that is quite a difficult one to solve because of that. As well, the number of people that need to be involved in the decision, yeah, in that it's not just setting a price, setting a restriction, managing a rate. You have lots of people involved in the process, both, from the decision-making standpoint, but also downstream of the decision. So for all those reasons, I think the complexity of the problem was something that, the more we dug early on in the company's life, the more interesting it was to us. And for us as technologists, that's a moat because we want to go solve hard problems for customers, right? If the problems are easy to solve, you don't generate a significant moat behind what you're doing. So that was great to us. But I think the one other thing that was, I think, difficult about the industry is that there's, and you'll probably resonate with this as well, Sebastian, that there's a severe underinvestment in technology across the hospitality industry.
Hmm.
for good reasons. I mean, the industry has been very cost focused for a very long time, and technology is seen as a cost center. So consequently, everyone is looking to try and find the least expensive solution to their problems rather than the best one that can grow their business, grow their revenue, accelerate their decision making. So I think that's been something that we've, hopefully as an industry getting past, but in some cases persists.
That's so interesting. You mentioned in your description of your product machine learning and I guess artificial intelligence. How much of, I guess, your product is controlled by a artificial intelligence, if I may call it like this? Is there a virtual mind behind your tools, behind your algorithm?
Yes, well, you saw my eyes light up once you stumbled onto that topic. So to go to the start for a second, we started this company with the strong conviction that machine learning was going to change every industry, not just hospitality. So it was really at the genesis of creation of Pace. So we're really excited that the kind of rest of the world has caught up to our excitement about ML and AI. In terms of whether there's a brain behind me here,
Hmm.
that's a sentient brain, I think I'm paradoxically incredibly excited about the future of AI and machine learning, but also a bit pessimistic in that the hype is pretty wild at this point, right? With people saying that these machines are sentient and so on. They're not.
Um,
Machine learning has become an incredibly powerful tool to essentially do automated decision making and assist humans in making better decisions, but in nowhere is the no case rather is the tool sentient. So there's not some brain that's going to, you know, herald a kind of a Terminator 2 apocalypse behind me. It really is about a better decisioning tool to drive better commercial decisions.
at the risk of nerding out, I want to learn from you because I think you're the person that I will learn from. I'm familiar with the concept of what an algorithm is. At what point does an algorithm stop and machine learning start? Like
Yeah.
where does the 1 + 1 = 2 plus x plus y plus to the power of stop and become a self-learning, I guess, mechanism, if you
Yeah.
will?
Yeah.
What can you help me understand that?
Absolutely, absolutely. And we're straying into waters where there's active conversation, not just amongst technologists and entrepreneurs, but philosophers, people who study, uh, the mind's eye and these kinds of things. So we're getting into very deep waters here, but I'll
Mhm.
try and not make it too boring a lecture. I would say, first off, the division in my mind between AI and machine learning, the real rigorous use of AI, I think, should be reserved ultimately for artificial general intelligence. So these are really sort of multi domain intelligence systems that we haven't produced yet. So
Yeah.
that's what I think most rigorous scientists would use as a definition for AI, but we happily will use AI to describe other systems in a more colloquial way. In
Mhm.
terms of when you go from a line that is an algorithm to machine learning, I'd say first off, you start with a rules system. So, in its simplest form, algorithms are essentially a set of rules. And that's the way lots of other platforms and, prior to the advent of machine learning, basically all quote intelligent systems operated, right? Where they were rigid rules, they were ultimately quite fragile. When you step off into the realm of machine learning, that is where essentially you're not generating fixed rules. So that really is, in my mind, what differentiates a set of algorithms which are rules based from machine learning. It's where the fixed rules are not being generated by a human, essentially not being hardwired by a human being. They essentially are generated as a consequence of the data you feed the system to train it.
Okay. I got it.
Hopefully that made some sense. I know I was normally when I start talking about ML and AI, people start glazing over. You can tell I'm the world's
No,
worst
I
dinner
mean,
party guest because this is an area I'm quite passionate about.
so the rules are more flexible. They can be used, I guess. the machine decides what rules to apply based on the data
Essentially,
that is fed.
essentially, in some sense, then it's not a rules-based system because rules generally implies something that's been hardwired by a human being. Yeah,
Okay.
essentially an if-then statement for those that are a little bit more computer literate like yourself,
Okay.
versus something that's more flexible, more open, and less rigid.
All right. I think well done. I'm smarter, which is great. Now let's bring this intelligence, if you will, or this machine learning to a hotelier, a property, and let's start with that, which is sort of the small independent 50-room property, of which there are plenty of in this world. That doesn't have a revenue manager on site, right? There is no revenue management practice. How do we help them, I guess, discover revenue management in step one? And step two is potentially, uh, get them to use a tool like your product Pace, but I'm sure there are others out there as well. I'm just curious, like, how do we remove some of the fear and at the same time, maybe work on the awareness that such tool is critical? What's your point
Absolutely.
of view there?
I think first of all, you have to be thinking about the upside. So, we didn't build this business to create clever science experiments. We built this business to produce results for our customers. And results there means better performance commercially. So all our customers engage with us because we produce better results and we have a really exciting roadmap of, additions to our platform that will continue driving better results. So that's the first thing I would say to someone in these kinds of conversations, that revenue management is really about generating better results. And if you're doing nothing today, or you're in an Excel spreadsheet or something along those lines, there's a lot of low-hanging fruit that will immediately drive better results for you. So, it's essentially a commercial argument as to why you should be using a revenue management system like Pace Revenue. I'd say the other important bit is that it drives better decision making outside of the sort of tactical things that a machine learning system can do. Yeah, in that the human being is not totally cut out of the loop. In fact, the human being here is freed up from these sort of short-term tactical decisions so that they can make better strategic decisions. So our platform enables better data-driven decision making the human users as well. So in many ways, this is going to make your day better because you'll be freed of sitting behind an Excel spreadsheet. All of that busy work will be taken care of by the machine learning AI system. You'll be focused on some key strategic decisions that can really drive a differentiated improvement for your business. And then you'll be off doing what you started a business for, which is pleasing guests, right? I mean,
Mhm.
most hoteliers get into the business because they want to provide a great service and engage with a customer, not because they want to sit behind a computer with an Excel spreadsheet. This product frees you from that and enables you to be on that path.
So continuing on that train of thought, if I'm a owner and operator of a hotel, set hotel, let's say 50 or even 100 rooms, should I hire a revenue manager? Or should I purchase a revenue management system? This,
Yeah, well,
or
again,
do I need to do both? Or do I need
yes,
to do both?
exactly. So I would say, so most of our customers are quite a bit bigger. So they have revenue teams actually in most cases with,
Mhm.
not just a VP of revenue management or chief revenue officer, but teams below them as well. I would say as you get to the smaller scale, you get into the question of, does it make sense to have a full-time revenue management person or a part-time? There's some excellent individuals out there who do revenue management consulting, where they'll basically help you manage your business using a product like ours, but they'll do that for a number of businesses. So I think the combination of the human and the person, we believe, is the one that results in the best outcomes. It's really a question of finding the right platform for you, of which we are one, and we think we're the best out there, but don't take my word for it. Look at the results. But then also in terms of the people, there's really quite a broad array that you don't have to have a full-time person if you're at such a smaller scale that it doesn't make sense. There's some great individuals out there who can do it part-time.
So it's not either or. It
I don't think
is
so.
okay.
I really think the
Uh,
combination is the one that results in a win here.
Okay. Very interesting. I want to lighten a little bit this conversation because we went right into deep waters with machine learning and our AI. I want to do a quick lightning round. So the purpose here is to just, say what comes to mind. I'll throw a word at you, and you can let your mind wander, if you will. I'm going to start with travel in 2030.
Human.
Social media. That's an
Opportunity
answer.
and yeah, exactly. Opportunity, but challenging.
Okay. Leisure.
What I want to be doing.
Digital marketing.
Incredibly important.
Direct versus OTAs.
More complicated.
Luggage.
I would like to leave behind.
Turn down.
A great podcast that I happen to be speaking on now.
Okay, excellent, excellent. I want to talk a little bit about, I guess, COVID. I know we've left that behind you. You mentioned it early on in your remarks as a, I guess, driver of a different perspective. We felt in your commentary, at least you mentioned that we felt very positive about the last 3 years, but that's on the back of, you know, a period of time where travel has completely stopped for a lot of countries and for a lot of people that were restrained at home. I'm curious what you personally have learned from this experience, if I may say so.
Sure. I think, it's clear that the time was so challenging for hoteliers, but we have deep empathy for people that went through such a difficult time because it was a very difficult time for us as a company as well. We were still in the early days of Pace, and, getting hit with this kind of existential crisis early on in the business's life was not easy. For me, what I learned was really the resiliency of people. In particular, I'm so proud of the team of people that we've been lucky enough to recruit around us that, people hunkered down, gritted their teeth, powered through it, supported each other through this time, which was tricky for everybody personally, not just professionally, but really came out strong. And to me, that was just a huge testament to the resiliency of people around us and the grit that people have when they're really put to the test.
Is there a change that you didn't see coming out of the pandemic?
Well, I mean, the thing was when we were in the early days of the pandemic, nobody knew anything really, right? I mean,
Mm-hmm.
there were probably some epidemiologists and virologists who had, many PhD theses written about what would happen, but they were mostly ignored, unfortunately, in the early days. So no one knew, and so I had very little expectations about what would come to pass. What has been amazing, though, is just this incredible adoption of technology during that time in every sphere of our lives, right? I mean, we're speaking on one right now, video conferencing that has just accelerated to the stratosphere during this time. It's now the norm. Pre-COVID, it was something that a few techies used. I mean, it was important, but not nearly as structurally important as video conferencing is today.
Mm-hmm.
And I'd say that's an example of a lot of areas of technology that were really received as kind of huge accelerant through the times of COVID. And I think, the other thing, of course, was the incredible bounce back of businesses like Airbnb, for example. I know it's the hotelier's favorite threat and favorite thing to worry about, but they were a good example of a business that a lot of people counted for dead and came
Mm-hmm.
back stronger than ever. And I think as part of the hospitality community, we should be cheering that because that's partly the story of all hoteliers.
Yeah, amazing. Let's stick with technology for a minute. I'm curious what technology you think will disrupt the travel industry the most in the upcoming years.
I mean, I'm talking my own game here, but ML and AI are
Okay.
clearly going to be hugely disruptive. You've seen, for example, the many cool experiments people are running with these generative chat models, planning holidays and so on. So I think it's really interesting because these things can essentially pass intent in the way that we had reserved essentially for a human being in a previous go round. And that's clearly going to change the way people plan travel, book travel, etc. Of course, anything quantitative like revenue management has already been disrupted by machine learning.
Mm-hmm.
So that's only going to continue. But I'm, as I said earlier, just an extreme optimist about what's coming down the pipes, albeit with some, annoyance at the level of hype. But I think I'm extremely excited.
So what area do you think will be most disrupted when we stay with AI or the generative, I guess, intelligence or creation of content? We talk a lot about, application in support, in guest communication, in maybe FAQs that, the internet can answer all the questions that I may have about a specific destination. Um, but are there particular areas that you think will be disrupted more? Um, I still think that we haven't figured out search, for instance, right? I don't want 100 pages of results. I want one product that fits my needs. And
Yeah,
I'm
you want
still
your
missing
question
that.
answered, right? You want your question
Correct.
answered. No, exactly.
Correct.
And of course, Google's recent release of Bard at Google I/O is moving in that direction. There's huge consequences for the economic structure of the internet, actually, because so much is driven by search revenue
Mm-hmm.
that, moving to essentially a question answer format is going to change, just structurally change so much about the economics of the internet. But, I'll try and stay away from my own area because that's probably a
Okay.
little bit boring.
Yeah.
But one thing that is clear actually is the generation of content is totally disrupted by this. In that, some of the more intriguing examples you've seen produced by generative AI have been story generation, uh, email writing, content writing for marketing. So these areas, I think, are already in the bullseye of this technology, and will
Mm-hmm.
only be more so as we add more capable image generating models, for example, right? The ones that are out there, okay, but they have problems with hands and a few other problems. But once we
Mm-hmm.
start being able to generate, more lifelike images, more lifelike video from a prompt, it's sky's the limit, quite frankly, of what kind of content we can generate to drive better marketing performance.
Now, I want to talk about what you think it will do to revenue management as well, because, I consider you're somewhat of an expert in that field. So, do you mind predicting what it will do to revenue management?
Not at all. So I would say more of the same. So
Okay.
we, as I mentioned, started this company to drive down this path of creating autonomous systems.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's going to only get a huge accelerant from the investment that the broader AI community is putting into this technology. What does that mean for Hotelier? Well, better results, first of all, in that these systems will be more capable of actually generating the right price, restrictions, etc. So really incredible in that regard. But I think as well, a better interface to more parts of the organization. In that right now, probably revenue managers engage with the numbers, and they are the interface that has to provide essentially a translation layer between the numbers and a kind of a human storytelling around the numbers. I think that'd be hugely assisted by some of the generative models that we're seeing now that can essentially explain what some of these models are doing to drive better revenue. So I think they're going to be really powerful co-pilot or aid to the smart revenue managers out there. In some sense, I like the term force multiplier, in that they will really provide a huge multiplier of the power that the revenue managers currently has in her or his head and hands at this point.
So, in other words, a description of the graph that you're seeing in front of you, and what the critical, I guess, takeaways are from the statistic that is presented to you.
Absolutely. I mean, I think one of the things that you always see being pitched to revenue management, people coming up in the revenue management industry, is part of your job as a revenue manager storytelling.
Mm-hmm.
You have to be able to pitch why you're doing what you're doing to people outside of the revenue management space, your chief commercial officer, your CEO, etc. and get them bought into the strategy you're adopting and, basically why you've made certain decisions that you've made. There's going to be more and more, I think, from the sort of generative ML market, helping revenue managers be better at that, in addition to driving better results, which is, again, what we're already down the path of. So I'm quite excited about these kinds of things, ultimately making the revenue manager a hero here.
That sounds like a huge enabler, which I'm very much looking forward. Before we wrap up, I'm curious if there's a question that you would have liked me to ask you. Is there any topic that we haven't covered that you're passionate about that you wanted to cover?
Topic I'm passionate about. Let's see. Gosh, well, we've obviously spent a lot of time talking about what is my favorite topic. So I have to think of my second favorite child, if that's an allowed expression.
Does that exist?
Yeah, I mean, yes, I have a broad church of love. I'm all about the love here.
Excellent.
I would say, one of the things that I think a lot about is the change that's happening more broadly to the hospitality industry. And again, this is at its core a change driven by technology. So, I've spoken a lot about ML and so forth, but I often tell my team that, we kind of live in the future. And for a lot of businesses, a spreadsheet in a website is like magic, right? Like lots of businesses are still at the early days of adopting technology. So just doing things in the cloud is something that's quite new and can be quite scary to lots of people who have not been on this journey before. But so for me, it's a broader story about technology adoption and the wave of change that's happening across this industry, driven by, the consumerization of IT. Everybody has an iPhone or an Android phone and expects that kind of experience from their enterprise software as well. Everybody has mobile internet and expects to be, connected everywhere. So I think these kinds of pushes that came from the consumer world actually are what makes me quite excited about this kind of wave of technology change and adoption that's happening in the industry. And it benefits all of us. Cloudbeds is a good example as well. So it benefits all these companies that have been basically, early days pushing this change for a very long time. So I think that's the second child I would say I'm excited about. Exactly.
Excellent.
But it does require some humanity. I think that we can't forget that, right? That we have to take these humans along this journey with us and can't get swept away. Speaking about AI and the philosophy of AI, ultimately it's a human being that has to be in the driver's seat for all these technologies.
All right, the final two questions. I'm curious, if you could live anywhere in the world, where would it be?
Well, again, you're playing to my type here in that I'm from Trinidad and Tobago. Okay. So,
going home?
Being able to go home more often is something that I really have set on as an important milestone or metric I need to hit this year. The family are getting a little bit annoyed; they haven't seen me very often. So that would be one. And then we have spent a fair bit of time and have some good friends in Brazil. So, I suppose I'm boring in that I stay within the Americas, but we do love the music, we do love the culture, we do love the passion of the people. So there you go.
Perfect. And it sounds like you can put one next to the other because it's in the same time zone, or at least it's same direction. Okay. Jason, thank you so much for your time. Really appreciated your insights, your conversation, your width around revenue management, AI, machine learning, and everything around it. With that, thank you so much for joining me today, and I look forward to seeing you soon
for sure
at an industry event nearby,
in real life. In real life, Sebastian. Thank you very much for the time. Thanks for having me on, and thanks to the audience for the attention.
Thank you for listening to The Turndown. Don't forget to subscribe and tune in next week as we discover new exciting guests.